This is the Tree of Life, Season 15, Chapter 6. In this episode, we will be talking about the continuum between two forms of relationships between dialectical impulses and their implications for structural adjustments. I must start off by making a correction to the last episode. When a structure involves dialectical impulses, which are substitutions, such as in the example in the last episode, they do not create exclusive word associations. This is seen by the fact that when impulse 1 is a substitute for impulse 2, this does not necessarily result in defining the word associations by negation and affirmation. It is only when a structure is exclusive, that is, the relationship between the two dialectical impulses are truly contradictory, that the structure produces exclusive word associations. This is important for several reasons. As we saw in the episode before last episode, the operation, or structural adjustment, conserves the relationship between the two dialectical impulses. Which is to say that if one is a substitute for another, then the operation describing that conformational shift substitutes one structure member for another with respect to an impulse. Likewise, we see that substitution of one impulse for another involves some element of a temporal component. In the example given, smoking cigarettes was a historical behavior and a consistent historical pattern. Thus, we can imagine that when a structure is exclusive, that is, it describes a contradictory relationship between two dialectical impulses, those impulses define the impulse both by negation and affirmation. In effect, the resulting word associations are exclusionary. But we also see that these exclusive structures do not describe a choice. They describe an existing pattern, which continues by virtue of the flipping of phase. That is to say, there may be conformational changes within the structure, but the conformational entropy of that exclusive structure is constant. It may shift phase, but that doesn't change the entropy represented by the structure as a whole. Structures which describe substitution of one impulse for another are not exclusionary. That is, the flipping of phase involves different behaviors associated with distinct impulses. That is, they are not stable in conformational entropy, but may represent some choice, or change in entropy represented by the path of the participant. They represent changes in patterns of behavior. This means that you can represent old patterns as a series of exclusive structures, where impulse 1 and 2 are contradictory with respect to the same impulse. So for example, instead of buying candy for impulse 1 and buying cigarettes for impulse 2, you would have buying candy for impulse 1 and buying something else for impulse 2. Since impulse 1 is affirmed and impulse 2 negated, the impulses describe a choice, described by exclusive word associations. We also see that structural adjustments, or operations, tend to transform a substitutionary relationship between impulses into an exclusive one. Further, we can see that substitutionary relationships between impulse never exist in isolation. Where there is one pairing of impulses, one substituted for another, there is a third choice and a fourth and a fifth, etc. Thus, the transformation of a substitutionary relationship to an exclusive one through an operation consolidates conformational entropy with respect to a given path for a structure member. That's the end of the podcast for today.